And we're on.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm James. I'm the founder of the company, and here is Emerson, who handles our marketing and all sorts of other things. Okay. Today we have a great topic we're excited about, which is building and monetizing your database. So we're excited about this. I hope the audio is okay for everybody. If somebody can let us know that the audio is okay, that would be great. Just pop something in the chat. If it's chopping, we recommend you dial in. There's a dial-in number. If you click up in the upper right, there's a My Info, which has local dial-in numbers for various cities around the world. And we found that works pretty good for people. Okay, so I guess we'll get started here. So building and monetizing the database. The database is at the heart of your eDirectory application, and really it's the heart of your business. So it's really important that you think about it a lot. You know, how are you going to build the most high-quality database available, and then how are you going to monetize it afterwards? And really, it's an ongoing process, building it and monetizing it. It's something that you're going to focus on from the beginning forever for this type of a business. So first, we'll talk a little bit about building the database, where to acquire the data, how to get it done. The first thing to think about is having a goal. So most of our eDirectory customers, they're building some type of a directory. It isn't like a directory of anything. It's focused typically on some type of a niche or some category-based type of publication, or it's a geographic type thing, local guide, etc. One of those two things. And so for you to have a high-quality database, there's two aspects to it. One of them is the breadth. Do you have every listing available out there, every listing, every event, etc.? And then the second thing is the depth of the information. How deep do your listings go? Do you have every possible piece of data about the business? And it's really important that you think about both of those. And is there a way for me to move the mouse there? Just are they able to see it on the screen?
Yeah. You can
highlight. Yeah. So that when you're thinking about the quality of your database, it's really I have this diagram here that I hope you can see of the water here. And really, when you're thinking about it, it's the area. How do I highlight the area here? So here, right? And, oh wait, no. Sorry.
There's a tool.
Here, the tool. Okay. Draw. Great. So it's the area of this of the water here. The more breadth and the more depth that you have, the volume of the water increases, and you can kind of think about that as the size and quality of your database. That's what you're trying to do, is maximize it. So first, think about a goal, and how do you do that? Let's get the second slide here. First, estimate how many listings are available. So, hey, I'm doing a restaurant guide for New York City. How many restaurants are available in New York City? Let me go to Google here real quick. How many restaurants? How many restaurants in New York City? And I just searched it real quick, and obviously this may not be the most accurate thing in the world, but there are 24. The Quora tells me, first searching Google here on my laptop, 24,000 eating establishments in New York. About 8,000 of these are restaurants. So if you're building a restaurant guide for New York, that's your target. Yeah. And so you should really understand what that target is. And there's lots of ways to estimate what the total population is depending on your subject matter. For instance, if you're doing some type of a guide on doctors or medical, the government typically regulates that type of an industry, and I know somewhere you can go and figure out how many doctors are registered with their ID number, and I think it's something like 600,000 or something in the United States. I'm not sure. But whatever you're doing, you should understand how many's out there and what percentage you're going to cover and what your target is. From thinking about it from a user experience, when you're a user and you're using a guide, you really want to find the guide to be useful and have all the information in terms of both breadth and depth to it. So when you're building it out, you don't want to just spread very, very thin. If you're doing a nationwide directory on some subject matter, if you don't have the resources to cover everything all at once, focus on sectors of it at the beginning. So like New York restaurants, for instance, 8,000 restaurants in New York, that's a lot. If you include coffee shops and everything else, you're talking 24,000. Instead of going for all of New York all at once, maybe start with the East Village. Do that neighborhood and just kill it. Go street by street, get everything you got, and go from there. And then the second thing to think about is that depth of the information. In terms of setting a target there, what you should do is make a list of every piece of information that there possibly is about a restaurant in New York City. Obviously where they're located, but other little details like how many tables are in the restaurant, what year did the restaurant open, what is the name of the owner, obviously what is the cuisine type, and maybe there's a sub-cuisine type, like it's not just Japanese food, but it's Southern Japanese food, or maybe they specialize in some type of ramen noodle or something like that, and having all this extra information there is great. It really adds a level of depth to your directory. So think about that. Think about how wide can you possibly go, and then also how deep can you possibly go, and set those two targets right at the beginning. And then when you're building it out, it's better to go broad and deep for very specific areas first, and then expand to the next area, the next area, the next area, because if you just have a very thin thing with, say, basic restaurant info for New York City entirely, but there's no info about the cuisine or anything else, your competitor is probably going to get that traffic. But if you go really deep on one neighborhood, one corner, etc., somebody searching for something about that's probably going to land on your page. So those are good things to think about that. And one thing I want to do is stop for a second here. Just if anybody has any questions or comments, etc., just pop them right in the chat here, and I'll pause for a minute and discuss. We want this to certainly be interactive. Okay, so breadth and depth, and then how do you go about actually getting it done? Like, what are the logistics of it? And it really depends on what you're doing and how broad and how deep it is, etc. The best way to probably start is to purchase or scrape a basic list. I'll start with talking quickly about purchasing information. There's all sorts of data vendors out there on the internet. You can do just Google searches. There's everything. I know some years ago we used to resell data. We don't do that anymore just because it wasn't very lucrative and it was kind of a headache and whatever. Certainly we can point you in the right direction if you need to do that. But there's companies out there, Axiom, Dun & Bradstreet, Info USA, and those are probably the market leaders. And like if you go to Info USA, let's put this in the chat here. You can just type in infousa.com. They'll sell you a data list. You can even dial it down by zip code category. Some of the other vendors like Axiom, I don't think they'll sell very specific lists. Maybe they will. I know we did a deal with Axiom some years ago, and it was, I don't know, we were paying $30,000 a year, and it had very strict limits on how much we could sell, etc. with it. I know some of these really high quality lists sell their lists to Google and some of these other local GPS type directories, and they have deals that are hundreds of thousands a year. Info USA will slice it up for you depending on category, location, etc. But they charge a pretty high value per listing. You might pay 30 cents, $1, whatever it is. But if you're just doing a certain sector or whatever, it's a great way to get started. A lot of other lower quality vendors out there, Oddity software, etc. Many of these lists are complete junk, to be candid with you, and I think in the United States, an average business moves location or goes out of business or starts something like I think it's like 5 years, something like that, 5 to 7 years. So if you think about that, if the list isn't regularly updated, every single year, 14 to 20% of that data goes bad. So it's really, you got to keep on it to get it updated. But anyway, start, or you can scrape a list. If you're scraping, be very careful about copyright. You can research, what are the copyright laws, etc. Often basic listing data is scrapable, depending on where you're located, what jurisdiction, etc. To scrape, okay, we just had a question. So there's programs out there called web scrapers, and basically you can go to other websites and put in the address, and they'll pull out the data from the page. Some of them do it page by page basis. Some of them do it, more programmatically. You need to be careful that you're not stealing copyrighted data. Obviously, on the other side, I know a lot of our customers obviously don't want their data scraped, and we talked about that actually a little bit last week to do that. And there's a bunch of techniques. We have a little white paper on different techniques to avoid getting scraped yourself. But often, if you're a smaller player just getting started, it's not such of a concern. But anyway, you can research on the internet for data scraping tools, etc.
I'm testing a scraping plugin for Google Chrome.
Okay, yeah.
I don't have any good results yet, but I'm testing a few, so there are options for that.
And one thing to keep in mind with all of this is that at the end of the day, there's labor involved in building this database. So if you scrape it, you're going to need to clean it up, etc. If you buy a list, you're going to want to augment the data that's in the list. You don't want just kind of what you're getting. If it's something that's easy to do, there's probably not much value to it. It's a commodity that anybody can get quickly. So that's exactly right. Find another directory style site that has the kind of listings you want, and then you can scrape it. Would that be appropriate? I think it's appropriate for basic information that is not copyrightable. This is things like typically like address, phone number kind of stuff, public info. Things like descriptions, photos, etc. That's typically not appropriate. And that's copyright violation, just kind of a scummy thing to do. So we don't recommend you doing that, but we recommend you building your own content, getting your own photos from the listing owner, etc. The other thing that comes to mind with all of this is often the service that our directory owners are providing is a curation service. So it isn't just, hey, I got the info here, but it's really the set of information that you're pulling together. And yes, you're putting in your positive reviews, your editorial reviews, your, etc. And it's the association of all this information, the curation is the value that you're providing. And it's somewhat, what you're doing at the end of the day, it's somewhat like Google. Google's a search engine, right? They go out and essentially scrape websites all day long and then provide search results that direct people to those websites, etc. So, yeah, your scraping strategy, we need to mention it for sure. Be careful about all the copyright, and we don't obviously recommend just ripping off somebody's website. Not a good idea there. But anyway, usually it is part of some, many of the directory type sites to get them started. All right. The second thing is after you have the base data, it's a good idea to fill in the category leaders yourself, and you probably really, even if you have a team of people, it's really good that you do the oversight yourself and do these key listings yourself, just so you make them look great. They really need to look fantastic. And if you start and you set a bar very high for the quality of the data in your directory, what you'll find is that the people working for you and the listing owners that, the business owners that fill in their own listing and claim their listing and fill out their own data, if they see all these other listings on the site looking great, they're going to put more time into doing it themselves. So you want to set that bar high at the beginning. Back to the example of New York City, New York City restaurants. So say you're doing a New York City restaurant guide. You want to fill out listings for, what are the leading restaurants in New York City. It's been a while since I've been there, but I know, I think there's a restaurant called 11 Madison Park that I've never been to, but it's a very high-end restaurant that always wins Best Restaurant in New York City awards. Go in and fill out a listing for that yourself. Make sure the photos look great. Make sure the listing has all the possible info you can possibly think of about it. And make sure it looks great. And, Tavern on the Green, whatever, the other famous restaurants in New York. Put in a few of those in each category yourself, and then send it to your team to do the rest in scale. In terms of doing it in scale, there's all sorts of third-party services out there. One I highly recommend you take a look at is Mechanical Turk, mturk.com. This is actually a service put together by Amazon.com, and you can pay a little bit of money per listing. And you have them do things like, hey, I need hours of operation for this business, and somebody will go out and do that sort of manually. It's basically like a crowdsourced system where you can upload a database and then have an army of people go in and fill in the info that you need, and then you re-import it back in eDirectory. There's also the option of hiring freelancers. Are great. Pay them on a per listing. Get a Craigslist, go to some other whatever websites. Get a trainee. It's often good if you have them in the office yourself. It's low skill labor, so it's not necessarily terrible. It's terribly expensive, but it is good to hire somebody to do it at scale. And let's see if we have a question. Will there be a PDF or guide with this info, or should I take detailed notes? Yeah, we'll be able to publish actually the webinar, and I think we're putting some white papers together. I don't know if we have on our website.
I always send a link for the recording after the webinar, so
okay.
Don't worry.
Yeah, so it'll have the slides and stuff in it, and I think we'll have info on our resources section if we don't already. We have some of this probably on.
We have a listen playlist at YouTube with all the webinar recordings.
Okay.
It will be there.
Yeah, I think we have some white papers and stuff too, but we'll make sure we get this to you. Okay, yeah, so doing it in scale is really important, and you can figure out how long it's going to take and what it's going to cost to get your data where you want it to be if you have the initial goal, and then you've done a couple yourself, so you kind of understand that it takes me about 10 minutes per listing, 20 minutes per listing to really do a great job. Then you can understand what your freelancer or trainee production should be, make an estimate, etc. And you don't need to do it all overnight, but you can go neighborhood by neighborhood, block by block, city by city, category by category, whatever it is, and fill it out. But it is important to have that goal and have some understanding what you're moving to. After you have sort of the base data and the framework in the directory, then you can also send out an email blast to listing owners to claim their listing, and they can go in and add descriptions, photos, etc. for you. One thing to keep in mind with this is if your directory is totally empty, don't do this at the beginning. Wait until you've already set the standard for how good the directory is going to be. If the directory doesn't look good, they're not going to spend their time on it. It's just not worth the time for them. The other thing is you may want to combine this with types of monetization, other newsletter stuff, etc. So be strategic about when you start blasting people in your database to claim listings. It's great because they do the labor for you for free, but on the other side, they're not going to do the labor unless your site looks pretty good. And so you want to think about when you're sending that out. But that certainly helps you do things at scale. If you have 20,000 people and you send a series of, and one blast isn't going to work either. You probably need to send, a series of them over a period of time, 6 blasts or something, and then you'll start to see the pickup go on that over time. And when you're sending out that blast, one other note is if you don't have much experience in email marketing, you really need to make it easy for people. And in your newsletter program, you want to use the mail merge, where you can export your data from the directory, load it into your newsletter program, like Constant Contact, Campaign Monitor, et cetera, and make sure it's easy for the user to click, link, find where they're at. You can put their personal name in there and have a link right into their listing. The database has a field called friendly URL that has the URL extension, and just make it super easy for them where they don't need to go to your website homepage and then find their listing. They should click right in there. And if you have any questions on that, you can let our support know, etc., how to get that done. Okay. And then, so anyway, when you're doing your directory database, just remember that it has Snowball characteristics to it. And basically, like, Snowball isn't going to roll at all when it's first getting started, so you really need to push it until it gets momentum. And then as it gets bigger and bigger, you'll find it has so much momentum on the end, you can't even stop it, and that's kind of the goal there. But keep that in mind and know where you are in terms of that snowball curve and how big the ball needs to get. And you'll get a sense of that over time. When you first start, nobody's going to give you the time of day. You have to do everything yourself. Over time, you'll find people just kind of coming to the website, claiming their listings alone, etc. And so just find a way to get to that. Stay on it until you're there. Okay. So I guess that's basically building out your database, and it works great with events too. With events, the listings go stale more quickly, so it's a little bit more work. But there are some feeds and stuff you can plug in for events. Directory database, Yellow Page Business, great business model. So that's often the bread and butter for people. Okay. So anyway, that's the database, building it. And then monetization, that's kind of the next thing we'd like to discuss. At the end of the day, you're running a business here, and so, or even if it's a nonprofit, you want to have engagement, etc. So donations, whatever. So monetization is the key, all right, the core of all that. So basically for monetization, for a high-level overview, there's a couple ways you can do it. Obviously, you sell listings. That's the easy one. Obviously, it's right there on the website. But there's a lot of other things you can do with your database. And many times, many of our customers, actually, the listing sales are a small part of the business, a nominal part of their business even. And so, oh wait, sorry, I'm going to stop for a second. We had a question we just saw. Typically, how long does it take to get the database phase, I assume, completed? It really depends on the size of your data. So if it's, we have people that's, what's your total target market? How many listings are there? Think of that, and then how long is it going to take you to put in each individual listing? If you're in a small resort town, what you can do also, if you're not sure how big it is, you can do some estimates, like figuring out how many businesses there are per population, et cetera, because it's easy to look up population for a city. Then you can figure out how many there are. How long does it take, though? I would probably say you could probably very, very quickly get to like 80% of where you want to be, and then that last 20% is probably going to take you till infinity. You get 80% very, very quickly, like a day or two, a couple weeks maybe. And then 90% might take twice, 3 times that long, and then you'll get to 99%. And then even big, high quality players with unlimited budgets, that last 1 or 2% can take quite a long time. And how far does it need to get before you move your primary focus somewhere else? In some of the other webinars, we talked about the phases of getting this business started, this directory business. And so the first phase is often building the content, the database, etc., making sure your site looks great. The second phase is driving the engagement, getting people to come and involve. And then the third phase is the monetization. In this webinar, we're talk quickly about the building the data quickly, because it's important that many people try to monetize without having decent data. But really, what we're focused on is phase 3 here, which is the monetization. So, how long does it take? Depends. Local restaurant guide, even for New York City, you might spend a week or 2 putting that data together, the basics of it, and then you're going to work on it forever. But if it's something bigger or longer, it might take weeks, months, years, etc. It really depends. Okay. monetization method. Okay, so back to where we were. So anyway, you have your listings, selling listings, great, but there's a lot of other ways to monetize the database, and we're going to talk about those now. So the basics of it, aside from selling listings, there's a lot of ways to sell and rent the data. And for a very high-level overview, fixed fee for your full list you could sell, per listing fee, fee per sale, like people pay you whenever they make a sale using your data, etc. As far as who buys data, there's all sorts of, every company out there typically buys data. Every company that isn't like a very small business buys data, right? I mean, every marketing department out there has, money that they spend acquiring information, etc. The large players in the local search space, this is like Google, Yahoo, Bing, GPS vendors, etc. They spend a lot of money every year buying data lists from different companies, and often what they do is they'll buy the data from every company and then put it all together and then try to make sure it's updated, etc. But most of our customers are focused more on niche, smaller lists that aren't just every business out there. Google and these GPS vendors, they need things like address, location, rating, etc. So that's important for them. But the niche list vendors, they're often more concerned about the depth of the information that you have inside your database. Things like, what products is the business selling? If it's not like in the restaurant space, if it's more of a B2B, many of our customers are in B2B, and the products that you're selling, who are the competitors of the business, who are the key players, who works there, price points, whatever other information you can put together in your directory. eDirectory has an additional fields feature that we recommend you take a look at, and you can add additional fields, especially if it's B2B. We can also customize, often for our B2B customers, they customize the directory to add additional fields. Some of those fields aren't even displayed on the front of the site many times, but they just want to have that in their database so they can monetize it later. Anyway, so for the niche list, all sorts of buyers out there are available. Typically, the use of the database, it's used for marketing purposes or types of research development, types of information. Somebody's going to, hey, do we want to attack this market or not? And if they can buy a data list of who's in the market, who the competitors are, et cetera, then it makes a lot of sense for their business. All right.
Just one thing I'd like to add is that you were mentioning about just the business listing data.
Yeah.
After their directory is up for a while, they will have a database for users.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So that's the other piece of it. So eDirectory has the 3 roles. The visitor role, which are people that come and view the information, add reviews and ratings, etc., and they often sign up with their email address. And then it has the sponsors, which are the business listings. And you can monetize both of those, and often the visitor database, if you sign up for our newsletter, on the front, we have little widgets to do that, and then people sign up there, and then they're members of the database. So you can monetize both of those. The company database is often for like niche buyers, B2B. The company information is great, but often people that are just interested in that sector have a lot of value too. Because it's the target. It's very easy to go out there and like buy a list of 1 million names, right? And 1 million email addresses, you can go out and probably pay $20 and get one of those. But having a high quality list of people that are interested in a certain sector has enormous value for businesses. All right. Let's see, where's the next slide here? Right here. Okay, so selling versus renting the list. Obviously, typically it's better to rent instead of just selling it, because if you sell it, it's gone and they don't need to pay you anymore, and then you don't really know what they're doing with it, and they could sell it to somebody else potentially, even if that's against your term, etc. So often people prefer to rent the list. However, if your data is changing very rapidly, it may not even why bother. Sorry about that. Conference room phone just rang. Yeah, it's better to rent it if you can, but sometimes it doesn't make sense. If your data is changing, don't worry about it. You're just going to have a new update for them anyway. And sometimes companies will pay just a really large price for the data, and it's just, hey, sell it and be done with it, which is great. If you are renting it, you may not want to call it a rental. You may want to call it some other type of marketing program. And then you can send like, hey, listen, we want to use your email list. That's great. You can send the email yourself to the customers and then send them a report afterwards of the open, click-through rate, whatever, through your email marketing program. And that allows you to keep some control over the data and just make sure you're not going to lose everything. In some cases, certainly businesses, the rent isn't an option because they want to load the data list into their CRM or their call center list, etc. In this case, you need to evaluate if you want to do the deal. You probably want to use a strong contract, and you really want to know your buyer. I think that's the most important thing. I know the way that we do business here. It's just good to kind of know people, know what they're up to, know if they're, who they are, what their character is, and then you can make sure you're not going to lose kind of the heart and soul of your business for that. And then the other thing is, even if you may not want to call it a rental, but even if you're renting it or selling it, you can sell it as a subscription with updates, and that'll generate a recurring revenue for you. So it isn't just, hey, pay us one time, $1,000 or whatever it is. It's X per year, X per month to use the data, and then you regularly send out an update or a new file to them. Okay. So how to sell the list? It really depends on who your target is, what your market is, etc. And it's the first thing you probably want to do is understand that it's going to take a sales effort. The job title, business development. This is kind of what they do. Is kind of go out, work out these partnerships, figure out who these people are that can generate revenue from these data type partnerships. So. Understand that it isn't just, hey, buy my list or whatever. People don't come and just sign up and buy advertising very often. You really need to have probably proactively sell it. I think generally for many of these things, if you're selling listings, it's one thing you can do email blasts and people will come in and claim their listing and buy it. But if you're selling, sponsorships to, your bigger email list, et cetera, you're probably going to need to actually sell it. The first step in that is making a profile of your buyer. Understand who they are, what they potentially will use it for, what they pay, what they expect to generate in revenue. Once you understand all the dynamics there, you can start to target who these people are, and also understand what price point you can sell your stuff for. And keep in mind with the pricing that some industries have higher value than other. If you're doing a directory for the biotech industry, biotech pays an extraordinary amount of money for all sorts of data, different from hairstylists who probably don't, hairstylist directory, who may have interest in that. It's probably, companies that sell beauty products, etc. I don't know if you can think of some other things that may be interested in hairstylists, but they're probably not going to pay quite as much as some biotech industry that might have a drug that sells $100 million per year. So think about that when you set the value. But even if you do it well, hairstylist directory can certainly generate plenty of revenue there. In terms of how to actually go out and sell it, you can probably read a book on just doing types of sales, but what you can do is identify your target, go on LinkedIn, figure out who the decision makers are, try to reach out to them. It'll take some time. You'll probably need to do several contacts, tell them your story. Put together a package for them that they can just say yes to. Yes, I'll buy it. Let's do it. One other thing that works is doing trials. You can guarantee some results. Hey, listen, if you rent our list for a while, if the email blast doesn't work for you, we'll give you another one for free. That type of stuff often works to get them on board with low risk, et cetera. So be creative there. Okay, we had a comment come in, question. I'm wanting to create a curated holistic wellness directory. We're buying or renting from an established directory, be advised. I know you're talking about monetization, but there are already sites doing this that one we can partner with. Yeah, so if you're partnering with a site and you're setting up a site, you just really need to think about, like, are these people competitors or are they real partners? And what is their angle and what is my angle? And if you're new and getting started and reaching out to an established player, it may be a tricky conversation because A, they may just see you as a new entrant, new competitor to the market, and maybe your initial pitch is that, hey, I'm not going to compete with you, that isn't what I'm doing, but then they can quickly realize that your business plan may evolve. And then the second is if you're new, they may just not want to give you the time of day. However, you may be able to, you can certainly, I know if you get Info USA or so, there's plenty of places to buy data, to start your database out. Info USA, I'm sure, has various categories in that sector, and I know there's other places that you can do it as well. As far as are there already sites doing this? Yes, absolutely. Anything you can think of. I think, I very, very rarely hear of a new business idea, and that doesn't mean that the directory sites aren't successful. It's like, hey, you want to start a new restaurant in the city. You don't necessarily need to have a new cuisine type or something like that. You just need to do it better. And doing it better.
Or doing it different.
Doing it slightly different, yeah. And do it better, do it different. Some twist on it, some angle on it. Yeah, but there's always a way to get it done. So yeah, think about that. But certainly, there's always existing players in the market, and if there's nobody already trying or trying to do it somehow, it may be even tougher. So if you see a few competitors there, it's probably a good sign, actually, that it can be done. And really what you need to do is just get out there and hustle. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. And then, okay, so you can sell the whole list, you can rent it, and then you can monetize the list on your own. And so there's a bunch of ways to do that. One way is just using affiliate links. Like Amazon has a program where you can set up an affiliate link, and then anytime somebody clicks on that link, goes to Amazon and buys something with that link, Amazon will pay you a percentage. And so typically the way that people do that is they put in links to specific products that are of interest to their users, and they might do a review of them, etc. So, people that are foodies, go to restaurants in New York, back to that example, you can put in some links to Amazon for products that that foodies might like, what are those sous vide machines, or machines that make you fancy stuff for cooking, etc. That often works. Anything else you can think of, depending on the sector and what you're selling. And one thing to keep in mind with the affiliate link is there are a lot of programs. I think on the next slide I mentioned some more of those. There's some programs out there, PureFly, Max Bounty. There's a site called AppPaying and some others that will do reviews on various affiliate programs. So you can do some research there. The thing to keep in mind with many of these affiliate programs is that you need a really, really large list to generate any significant revenue, because they're going to pay you peanuts, on the sale. You're going to make a low single-digit percentage point many times on the sale, and then there just aren't going to be, if you send out a blast to 10,000 people, how many are going to click, how many are going to buy, etc. So really you need to think about those programs pretty carefully. But still, you may be able to just generate enough revenue to get the bills covered, and that's good, and then focus on some other efforts for the bigger revenue there. So anyway, take a look at those, and you can often do a combination of these strategies, like put in some links to this, some paid sponsorships, etc., and then also sell a main sponsored email, sponsored post, sponsored review. And for many of our customers, selling these sort of elephant packages turns out to be a much better way to earn a living than killing a bunch of squirrels. You know, you can hunt the elephant instead of a bunch of squirrels. Sometimes it's squirrels plus elephants. You can set up an affiliate program and start getting paid immediately. Some of those sites have like some limits, like you need to have a certain amount of content or traffic or whatever, but they'll start paying you immediately, but it may not be that much money. However, you may be able to go out, like if you're doing these restaurant reviews in New York City, for instance, you know, you become, you know, start to get a following for your newsletter, et cetera. You have visitor profiles. What you can do is go out and sell to these restaurants a package like, hey, listen, we're going to do a sponsor review. We're going to send it out to our list of X subscribers. With that, we're going to put in an open table link where they can book a table right through the thing, and you'll be able to see whatever you want to do that. You know, if you don't have a big list or the restaurant is doubtful that they're going to get any business off it, they might just give you a free dinner. They might just tell you to get lost, but often they'll give you a free dinner at a minimum, and more than that, if you're able to really deliver results, people will pay for results. So you can go out and do that kind of a sale. That's a restaurant example. This works great for types of B2B type products too. It also works great for vacation type, stuff as well, where the average sale. So if you sell a larger package to a sponsor, often you can do that, sell it for a significant amount of money, and then you're not out, waiting for your affiliate revenue to come in all the time. When you're doing this, also you can take the risk off of the person buying by working out a commission per sale or per lead. And basically you say, hey, listen, however many leads or however many sales comes in, you pay us X percentage. This works great, especially if the stuff is more expensive. If you're doing some directory like real estate, very high dollar ticket for any type of sale in real estate. If you're selling timeshare, whatever it is out there with real estate, it's like one sale will cover whatever for a long time for that. So people will pay a lot for that. Other types of things, expensive products, etc. Often you can work out a pretty good size commission per sale for that. Stuff in the financial space, refinance, mortgages, etc. That stuff works too. You need to make sure if you're doing that you have a way to track it as well is really important. If there's no tracking on it or loose tracking, you need to be careful. We have a couple plugins, I think, we have a plugin called, I think, iDev Affiliate and a couple other ones that do tracking and commission payouts for people. So you may use that to do your sale tracking if you're doing these kind of individual deals for that. So be creative is the key to this, though, is figuring out, who has the money, where the money is, and what they're spending it on, and then go and talk to them, figure out what you can do for them, and just find a way to make the deal work. All right. And then, so the last general comment that I had here, and then we'd like to open it up to questions, comments for people. The last general comment is, with all this data stuff, terms of use, privacy policy are really, really important. Recently Facebook's been in the news, with what they've been doing there. It's a hot issue, so make sure your terms of use, privacy policy are tight. There's all sorts of templates you can download on the internet. We don't have a template just because we don't want any liability from having to give away a template, but I'm sure you can find one out there that meets your needs. Make sure they're well written just to cover you from the legal liability. Beyond that, and probably more important actually, is to think about your ethics and also think about what you're providing for your visitor base. So just make sure your users don't get spam. Nobody likes their email box filling up with a bunch of spam. However, people do like really targeted advertising that provides a service to them. So make sure your advertising or people are using your stuff for good quality, etc., and make sure that what they're doing with it, they're going to want to read, and it's not taking away too much value from your publication at the end of the day. The way that you're monetizing it. And often it's kind of a yin and yang thing, like, oh, I got to monetize to take in the revenue, but I don't want to make it too obtrusive, you know? And a great example of this is how Google actually got started, a great example of doing this balance. You know, years ago, there was a whole bunch of different players in the search market, Alta Vista, web crawler, et cetera, and Ink2Me, Yahoo ended up buying at some point. And basically what happened was many of these companies were burning through their venture capital money and having trouble monetizing because the internet wasn't quite established as a way for businesses to generate revenue, et cetera. And so what did they start doing? They started really going overboard on the monetizing and just like throwing up ads everywhere or putting in search results that weren't really what the user wanted, et cetera. And then Google came in with a very simple system that was search results in the middle, highly targeted ads on the side, and obviously the side with a scroll bar, right? Instead of the other side for most people's computer screens. But they didn't overdo it, and that the users liked it, and so they all ended up using Google. So just think about that. Take care of your users, take care of your engagement, et cetera. Yeah. So let's see if we have any questions at this point. Anybody have any questions they want to ask? Just type them in, questions, comments. I'm happy to comment on anything. Let's see, we got any question here. All right. Can you please comment on potential to do a directory with high-end enterprise business software, specific B2B niches, specific vendors, deal size 100K plus? Software, B2B software, great market for this type of business. Great market. You can go out there. Actually, I read a book some time ago, just because I'm in the software space, ourselves, and we were in that space. Most of the software revenue, it isn't retail software. Like if you look at the top 100 companies that sell software based on revenue, like I don't know, 97% of them or something are they're all B2B, with these big ticket dollar sales. So probably if you're, so I'm going, my idea is build out a high-end enterprise B2B software niche. What I would do is figure out, okay, what type of software do I want to do? And then I would probably look at it and figure out what is a space that has a lot of potential money into it and then is somewhat fragmented. Because if the space is fragmented and there isn't a monopoly player, then you're more likely to need a guide to determine like what type of software you're going to use, And so some spaces are like very monopolistic already. The database space, enterprise database, basically, you got Oracle and you got Microsoft SQL Server, and that's basically it. And obviously there's a bunch of open source technologies and a bunch of other vendors on top of it. Cassandra, NoSQL, Elasticsearch, whatever, these other kind of pieces to it. But at the end of the day, people spending a lot of money on it. There's a couple of them. But there's other spaces like, I think, HR software, all sorts of other things, especially supply chain. Supply chain is probably a good one because supply chain is often fragmented. There are monopoly players like the big time like SAP stuff, but specific industries often have these SaaS offerings that often are fairly lucrative, and there's a couple players in each of these different niches, and so think about that. I think those are often great, and then these software companies often have large marketing budgets, depending on the company, but yeah, typically the marketing budget's pretty good, especially these real niche types of software. Hey, I'm doing supply chain for auto parts or something else like that. Who are the players in the industry, whatever. I'm doing HR software for the restaurant business or HR software for these specific areas, et cetera. You can often find a way to reach out to these individual organizations, figure out who they are, contact them, build the data list, set up a review site, et cetera. And yeah, so that's a great business model, high ticket, some fragmentation, et cetera.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add to that? No. Okay, great. The niche I'm thinking about is very fragmented, lots of vendors in the 20 to 100 million revenue. That sounds great. I was wondering if there's a storefront, but is it for our customers or is it just for us to sell? Yeah, so we have a storefront mod, and that basically allows you to open up an e-commerce shop. The storefront's actually based on the Magento platform. It's a widely known open source store, so you can sell anything you want on it. Many times, people have the directory and then they pick a couple items that they want to sell in addition to having the directory, whatever that might be. Anything with people selling coupon books to physical items. If you have a directory on beekeeping, for instance, you might want to have all this directory information on there, but also a couple beekeeping supplies, etc. So people are using the storefront for all sorts of things. Okay. So our customers can't use it to sell products. So for the storefront, yeah, actually, so Magento has a marketplace option in it where you can set it up as a marketplace for vendors, individual vendors to sell there. It's going to probably take a little bit more configuration on your end. I don't know, actually. I need to check what level of the integration is on our end with the single sign-in with the listing owners being able to get in there. So I'll do that. But there is a way to get that done. I would just be very careful about doing that and how you're doing that. A marketplace model is really a great business model once you get it going, but it's very difficult to get it set up because for your customers to be able to sell stuff, basically you have two customers to please. The listing owners or the whoever's selling the products, they don't want to put stuff in your store unless you have a lot of traffic. And then nobody will come to the store. The traffic won't come unless there's a lot of products. So essentially, you're building a marketplace there. So great business model. Like eBay is never going to go away just because they have that marketplace. And for people to get both people on board, lots of companies have tried to unseat eBay and they haven't had any success. It's certainly, once you're up and running, it's great, but just think about that carefully and whether you can execute it. And the pure directory monetization is certainly a lot better start. And then once that's running, you might want to load in the marketplace to go for that. Special of the week, yeah. So there's lots of ways to do other types of monetizations for like special of the week type stuff. We have a deals module. You can set up just a page on the website and sell sponsorships on it. Set up a deal of the week page. Just create a special page, a custom content page, and then you can actually embed in some things from your Magento store without using that full marketplace feature and all that kind of stuff. You can drive them to their own website. All sorts of different ways to do that. But I would say. And I'm in the business here, and we have a customization team, but I always tell people avoid the customization if you possibly can. Keep things simple until you've proven the business model. That's the key to things, because otherwise you're going to code out all this stuff and worry about this complicated thing, and then you're like, and you launch it, and you got crickets. Like, nobody comes, right? Like, oh, no. So start small, test it, just find a way to get things running, and you can often just set up a page on your website using the content editor, put what you want on there, call somebody up, sell it to them. If it's working great, then you can automate it. All right. Okay, great. Paid for some custom work 5 minutes ago. Thank you. Yeah, no, but it's good, and you'll learn, because some of the stuff you certainly need to do, and some of it you just can avoid. But just be smart about that. I've seen too many projects over the years. People come in and they start a big complicated project, and sometimes you got to do that. It's the only way to test it. If you don't have the user experience, that may kill you before you get in the water. Yeah, keep things simple if you can. If you're thinking of setting up a storefront, that's probably a good idea. Storefront plus marketplace on the storefront where your customers are getting in there. That gives me some concern unless you have a lot of capital and you're really ready to make a go at it. Okay, great. Yeah, design work, the user experience, the design stuff's always a good idea to get that tight. Because at the end of the day, lots of competitors out there on the internet. It's really about, do you have the best content? Does it look the best? Etc. Okay, great. Do we have any more questions? Any more questions? Okay. How much help Can your team offer on the startup side as far as the planning goes? Yeah, if you, we have some onboarding packages. If you need some custom consulting, we can certainly put together a package for you to do something. If you just need some informal advice, don't hesitate to reach out. We can put my email in here. If we could, type my email in here. You can reach out to me. I'll give you some informal advice. If you really do want to have a business plan and all that, we can, put some package together for you. At the end of the day, we're a software company. We want to help you be successful. I've just been doing this and working with people for a long time, so I kind of understand how everything works. And often our customers will find that they get in there and they have a sense of the market better. But yeah, as far as how much help, we need to see kind of what you need as far. We can't run the business for you, obviously. Certainly can give you some tips. If you need some formal consulting and stuff, we can certainly talk about a package. We have some onboarding plans that are meetings every couple weeks or something, just to give you some coaching, and that often works great for people as well, as far as that goes. But yeah, there certainly is a depth of information out there that we may be able to offer, just in terms of like, what tools to use, what do you need to do to be competitive, et cetera. So, yeah. All right. Okay, well, I guess that's it for today. I hope this is useful for everyone. If there's any more questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. And what's next? We have a webinar next week.
Not yet. We're working on the next schedule for April.
Yeah, we'll have our webinar scheduled for April. If anybody has any topics they want for the webinar, sure, don't hesitate to reach out. And yeah, thanks and good luck.
Yeah, and see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.